Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Targeted MS Quantitation Controlled and Accessed from Anywhere. My name is Sydney Panilla of LabRoots, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Today's educational web seminar is presented by LabRoots and brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific. To learn more, please visit thermofisher.com. We encourage you to participate today by submitting any questions you may have during the presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We will answer as many of your questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. You may also use the Ask a Question box to let us know if you happen to have any trouble seeing or hearing the presentation. All right, I would now like to welcome our speakers for today's webinar, Laercio Fernandes, Product Marketing Manager, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Richard Law, Product Manager, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Anthony Crawshaw, Product Manager, Thermo Fisher Scientific. Gentlemen, you may now begin your presentation.
Our presentation today has the topic Target MS Quantitation, Controlled and Accessed from Anywhere, which will cover Chromeleon 7.4 software, a powerful, compliant-ready network-grade software for chromatography and mass spectrometry. And this is the agenda for today's webinar. I will start off with an introduction of the new Thermo Scientific Chromeleon 7.4 software. Then I will hand over to Richard, who will walk you through the second topic of this presentation, which is targeted MS and data-dependent workflows. Then Anthony will cover the enterprise and compliance enhancements that will be available in this new feature release. We'll have a summary at the end and some time for a live Q&A. So let's start with the first topic of this webinar, which is Chromeleon 7.4 software. Chromeleon 7.4 software brings the power of compliant, networked laboratory software to quantitative MS workflows for instruments including triple quadrupole, stellar MS, and Orbitrap MS to deliver a best-in-class solution for targeted workflows up to at least MS3. It provides centralized data storage, remote instrument and data access, and multi-consensus reporting for targeted screening and quantitation workflows in biopharma, toxicology, environmental, and food safety. It also handles all aspects of networked operation, including user concurrency, network failure protection, and consistent handling of MS analysis. It is the first network scalable software to successfully transition to supporting targeted quantitative MS workflows. It provides support for stellar MS workflows, including targeted omics, small molecules, quant in toxicology, bioanalysis, oligos and peptide quant in biopharma, and pesticides, PFAS, and nitrosamines in AFS. Chromeleon software delivers unparalleled depth when it comes to native instrument control, acquiring, processing, and reporting data from a wide variety of Thermo Scientific MS instruments, including triple quadrupole and high-resolution accurate mass spectrometry, enabling robust and remote instrument control for all experiments and support for key targeted quantitation and screening mass spectrometry workflows. This seamlessly merges the power of Chromeleon software with industry-leading MS instrumentation to deliver a best-in-class solution for targeted MS quantitation workflows. So who's Chromeleon 7.4 software for? It's pretty much for anyone using MS for targeted quantitative workflows like analytical scientists or lab managers who need automation and ease of use. They are normally working in biopharma analytical development and QC labs, clinical or toxicology labs, or food safety and environmental testing labs. Those could be both non- and GXP compliant laboratories. And they will be supported by their IT or QA team, so tools for networking, administration, and validation support are a must in those environments. Those tools are available in Chromeleon 7.4 software. We have many users currently on our Chromeleon software version 7.3.2 or even 7.2.10, and some of you must be wondering, shall I upgrade to version 7.4? Well, it depends. Chromeleon software is used by laboratories in a wide range of different industries around the world. Many of our customers are challenged to improve efficiency and productivity while meeting the ever-increasing demands for regulatory compliance, data integrity, and flawless operation. To better meet the wide range of requirements from our customers, Thermo Fisher Scientific employs a release strategy that provides customers with a choice of how to deploy Chromeleon CDS. For example, Chromeleon software version 7.3.2 is a part of what we call a long-term support branch, which provides a Chromeleon CDS version that enables customers to maintain utmost stability and robustness over an extended period with minimized validation efforts. Maintenance updates are released regularly, and these updates include fixes for defects that can be made with a low risk for compromising stability. Those versions will be maintained for at least 5 years from the initial release date of the current long-term support branch of Chromeleon version and are usually deployed as enterprise for multi-lab or multi-site installations. Version 7.4 is a part of what we call feature release branch, and it normally introduces new innovations and enable customers to stay up to date with the newest technologies and latest advancements. Maintenance updates can be released to maintain stability. A given feature release is supported until the next major or minor feature release, which is usually every 1 to 2 years, and the updates are provided with new versions. In this case, all deployment options are supported: workstations, workgroup, and enterprise installations. Now I would like to hand over to Richard, who will walk you through the targeted MS and data-dependent workflows that will be available in Chromeleon 7.4 software. Over to you, Richard.
Hello. Today I will be introducing you to the new functionalities and features which we have enabled in Chromeleon 7.4 to support MS workflows, particularly those that involve MS2 and MS3 workflows. In this section of the presentation, I will cover some of the following areas. So the regulatory landscape with respect to mass spectrometry and how it's changing. Implementation of changes to the Chromeleon data model and how we interact and exchange information with Chromeleon and external sources. Some information on the extended library searching functionality that will be available in Chromeleon. Extended visualization, scoring and reporting for MS related functionality within Chromeleon 7.4. And we'll finish looking at some workflows that the extensions and enhancements will directly support. So historically, the main burden of MS usage was in the research and development phase of the pipeline. And as MS technologies were rapidly developing and new hardware and software solutions were being brought out, we faced some challenges. Because of the lack of built-in control and inherent complexity, it was difficult for these systems to break into the routine QA or quality assurance and quality control segments. Also, historically, the need for this was not as high. With the rapid increase in biopharma applications and larger molecule therapeutics and new modalities, and the increased difficulty in separation of impurities and modifications, the need for quantitative mass spectrometry in this routine QA/QC segment is heavily increasing. This increased need is also having an impact on the scrutiny applied further down the pipeline, with regulators being more aware and wanting to see how data has driven decisions earlier in the developmental process. As the need for mass spectrometry increases within this regulatory landscape, this also highlights some of the existing challenges that modern chromatography and data mass spectrometry systems have when it comes to data management, user management, and business continuity. So across the three areas, there's an increased need for all of these highlighted aspects, such as centralized storage, control of who can do what and when they can do it, and also these areas of business continuity, such as disaster recovery, recovery point objective, which is the acceptable amount of data loss that an organization can have after the consequence of a disaster, and recovery time objectives, which is the amount of time after a disaster in which the business operations need to be fully resumed and resources need to be available to be used. So when we look at mass spectrometry in the quality assurance and quality control environment, why was MS typically an underused element in this area, even within analytical development as well? So some of the points for this are expert users. So mass spectrometry, and especially high resolution mass spectrometry, required highly skilled users, and this was not really seen as being scalable into this QA and QC landscape. Also, variation was high, so reproducibility was difficult to achieve, especially when you compare this to similar results from different detectors such as UV and FID. Also, we had, or there were, issues with compliance tools. So the mass spectrometry software which was available on the systems just did not have the appropriate functionality from a compliance perspective. And this meant that procedural compliance had to be deployed, which is expensive from a time perspective, but it is also incredibly complex to achieve. When you couple this with the fact that each mass spectrometer seemingly had its own platform, its own software platform, this made familiarization incredibly difficult, but also scalability and training of your analysts. The increase in different experimental approaches to quantitation and confirmation also meant that different tools needed to be used in order to properly handle the data being acquired in these experiments. So what does that all mean for Chromeleon software? So whilst Chromeleon 7.3.2, and in fact even since earlier versions of Chromeleon, such as Chromeleon 7.2, supported mass spectrometry, there were some challenges in supporting certain types of acquisition past standard full scan acquisition, selected ion monitoring, and single reaction monitoring, or SRM, and multiple reaction monitoring, MRM. For example, whilst PRM, or parallel reaction monitoring, was fully supported, the selection of the scan filters, which were generated by the instruments, wasn't always automated, and this had to be done using a manual process, selecting each filter one at a time. And as you can imagine, if you had thousands of these scans, this would have taken a long time. And further to this, Chromeleon operates using a key concept of peaks. So therefore, visualizing different scans from various different MS orders was difficult. For example, the visualization of MS2 and MS3 data-dependent scans was very difficult because in many cases there were no peaks because they were single scan events. In order to better support these MS applications with single scan events, for example, we had to consider how our customers are using the instrumentation and how we can better support future application development within the Chromeleon 7.4 branch. As there are many different types of mass spectrometers which are in use with Chromeleon, one issue we continually had and faced was supporting all of the different drivers and acquisition modes that were available. So often new drivers were developed where the import and export type was redefined to better support the workflow at that time. But this caused issues when doing certain aspects of data processing. For this reason, what we've done is we've developed an agnostic import and export tool where the user can define their own custom definition of what they would like to import and export. We do support custom variables with this import and export. And as you can see, the ability to create and modify the import, export custom definitions is privilege controlled. Creation of this custom definition file can be semi-automated, where the CSV file headers are read and automatically passed into the definition file. And then from here, the user can select where these elements are mapped to in the Chromeleon processing method. And just here in the value mapping section. And other additional value mappings can be defined. For example, your source data may define a value as a string, and you might need to convert that to a number. So within the value mapping here, you can also specify here what string would be mapped to what value, or vice versa. So when we think about better supporting the MS application space that we have, we had to think about extending the data model that was used in Chromeleon, as it was not really fit for purpose with a lot of the newer MS instrumentation types. And therefore, we added some of the following areas to the XIC traces. So you can see we have MS order, polarity, and charge. And just as an example, the data shown here is from a stellar mass spectrometer, which is our linear ion trap. And here is the list of, from this experiment that we show, this is a list of all the available scan filters in this raw data file. And the idea here is that we will show you how MS order polarity will affect the filters which are available for selection. So first of all, we have MS order here, and as you can see, with MS order, we can now define this on the XIC level. This was not definable in previous versions of Chromeleon, and this helps us to drive an easier selection to the mass spectrometry filters which are available to choose from. So as you can see here, we've selected the MS2 order, and the filter, the available filter selection list, is now limited to only show the MS2 filters in this experiment. Again, if we take it one step further and we change the polarity, so here we've changed the polarity from positive to negative. Polarity was only available on the component level in previous versions, and now it is available on the XIC level. Here you can see that as we change the polarity to negative, we now filter out all of the negative filters. So only the negative filters are available for selection within these scans. And furthermore to the filter selection, the precursor mass defined here and the XIC masses also assist in driving the filter selection. And this is very similar to the existing behavior that's in Chromeleon 7.3.2. And you can see here when we define a precursor mass, the only available filter which has a precursor mass within the specified tolerance is this one. And you can see then this drives this filter selection. And similarly here, if you've got a precursor mass in an MS3 level, the precursor mass then uses the primary that was filtered in here. So whether it's an MS2 or an MS3 scan, will define what is displayed in the filter selection. Charge has also been added to the extracted ion chromatogram level. This was already available at the component level in Chromeleon 7.3.2, and this helps with both reporting and some visualization elements such as simulated isotopic abundance or simulated isotopic structure, which we will talk about shortly. Some additional elements that we've added to the data model are single scan events. So displaying single scan events was very difficult in previous versions of Chromeleon because this concept of peaks which we will refer to as 3 or more consecutive data points at this point, had limitations with visualization and reporting. So Chromeleon 7.4 introduces this concept of fragments into the data model. And fragments allows a user to define a target component in the processing method at any level of MS order that has a peak. And then from that peak, there can exist a subdependency of a fragment. Now, a fragment uses a single precursor mass, and then filters are selected that apply to this precursor mass within the mass tolerance that is specified within the processing method. And these fragments can be manually populated, or they can be automatically populated from standard injection, and you can also add a free text label to these fragments, which we'll see again shortly when we talk about the visualization. In addition to extending the data model in Chromeleon, we have also extended the NIST search functionality, which has long since been supported in Chromeleon. And 7.4 extends on this to support MS and some high-res MS search options, which we'll talk about shortly in the future. So here we'll go back to MS order, and we will briefly talk about some of the enhancements to the visualization of data in Chromeleon and what that means. So the behavior of the combination of the MS component plot and the MS spectral plots has been updated in this version of Chromeleon. And now the spectral visualization is driven by which ion trace is selected. So in this first example here, you can see that the first ion trace uses a full scan approach. So it's got a full scan header, and this is at the MS1 level. So this is the quantitation ion, it's got the MS1 order, and this is the full scan with the mass that you extract, and the mass can be extracted, can be seen in the spectra. And when we go to the next order, so we select the second peak, so this is timed MS2, and you can see at the timed MS2, we select the MS2, so the first confirmation ion, it selects the MS2 scan, visualizes it in the MS spectral plot, and you can see this is all driven by the data model. So precursor scan, product time scan, filter, and MS order. And the polarity obviously drives this as well. And again, when we move forward and we select the third confirmation, so the second confirmation scan, you can see we have the MS3, and you can see this has been drilled down. So this is all one component at the MS1 level, the MS2, and the MS3 level. And the studio now helps us to visualize all of this data and bring it into a single source that we can report all together in one report. This data is made possible by using the Stellar mass spectrometer. In addition to displaying the various MS orders in the extracted ion chromatograms or the ion traces, sometimes it's not experimentally possible to scan at all of the sufficient rates to generate a peak, or you might want to collect more data about other features of the injection. So in this case, you might want to use something like a data-dependent approach. And with the new mass fragments option and the mass fragments pane, it's now possible to visualize these single scan events and use the data to perform identification and confirmation. So here we can see the expected fragments overlaid with the experimentally acquired data. And it's got some composite scoring here down at the side to say whether it's detected or not, and if it's failed, what are the reasons for the failure. Further to this scoring, it is possible to enable flagging of the fragment ion data and to label each individual fragment ion. The fragment ions can be custom labeled. This can be done manually, or it can be done via the component import that we talked about earlier using a CSV or an XML import-export tool. And as these fragments, or as this fragment pane exists as a separate pane to the MS Spectra pane, this visualization can be done in combination with the MS spectral plot, where we can set this up to show simulated isotopes. So with simulated isotopes, it's long been possible to display simulated isotopic patterns in our freestyle application, and before that in Qual browser. And now Chromeleon can be added to that list. So when a chemical formula and a charge and polarity are present, it's possible to simulate an isotopic pattern and then fit it to an experimentally acquired spectra. So you can see this is automatically updated at the XIC level for these values. So here we've got the charge being shown. And you can see the isotopic distribution of a modified peptide over 4 different charge states. Additionally, we can apply adducts on the component level using this custom variable, the CM7 adduct custom variable. And it is intended that we will add the ability of specifying adducts at the XIC level in future versions. When calculating the simulated isotopes, resolution is also used. So from a target component, the targeted monoisotopic mass is used first to see if there's a resolution or a spectral peak to calculate resolution on. If that's not found, then we use the most intense mass in the spectrum for evaluation. In addition to the visualization of the MS2 and MS3 in the spectra, and to the simulated isotopes in the mass spectral plot, we can see here also the extension of the NIST library searching. So when we use the MS type search, which uses the final precursor to aid the scan, it's possible to display the library search hits of MSN spectra. So if we have MS2 in the top right and we have MS3, and this uses the final precursor, which is labeled in the scan just at the end here, to drive the selection of the spectra in the search program. MS fragments can also be searched using this NIST MS search functionality, and all report variables that you can use for the standard MS searching are available should you want to score things like the match score or probability or return a CAS number or chemical formula. These are all available within the UI and the studio and reporting engine. When supporting these various workflows within Chromeleon, there are many common areas of feature overlap, and these are essential for us to support. But there are also niche areas in which specific functionality is required to enable a complete workflow. So here's an example overview of some of those application areas and how we continue to support them and enhance them. So within bioanalysis, we have this need for a single software that supports the entire solution. We support this with system suitability testing and IRC, which is our intelligent run control. And this allows the user to ensure that samples are not injected under suboptimal conditions, and also that you can make on-the-fly decisions when certain criteria are met. So with the monoclonal antibodies and intact proteins, we support this with spectral deconvolution options, which allow us to assess multiple charge states with deconvolution and reporting alongside quantitative assessment in the reporting and within the studio. And additionally to this, we have support of these new modalities such as oligonucleotides, where we support positive and negative charge states, and this allows full support of these workflows, and also visualization of MSN scans in order to confirm fragmentation patterns and aid in sequence confirmation. And although it's not shown here, we also support the clinical and drugs of abuse workflows, where we support it from a targeted screening approach with the NIST enhancements or the NIST functionality that we showed earlier in the slide deck. On the environmental and the small molecule side, we now support multiple internal standards, which we have done for a while, but we've simplified the workflow. This is ideal when performing isotope dilution quantification using radio-labeled standards, and this is actually critical in the persistent organic pollutants segment. We now support a fully feature-rich version to enable Sante compliant analysis for pesticide analysis. This has got a rich and flexible reporting engine. We also support the ease of data transfer between Compound Discoverer and Chromeleon, supporting this perfluoral alkyl substances workflows and analysis for discovery and for quantitative purposes.
Thank you, Richard, for the insightful presentation. Now, let's continue to the next section. So I would like to hand over to Anthony, who will take us to the next topic. Over to you, Anthony.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to share some of the enhancements to enterprise and compliance areas within Chromeleon 7.4. Over the following few slides, we look at some of the improvements made to help system administrators manage their enterprise installations. We continue to improve our compliance offerings in line with regulatory requirements and our customer feedback. We will introduce a major enhancement to our already gold standard network failure protection functionality. We will see how Chromeleon tackles the ongoing threats from cybercrime. And finally, we'll look at a couple of new features expanding and improving Chromeleon's connectivity and openness. So due to the limitations within the Windows communication framework, which underpins how data is moved within Chromeleon, the transfer of large data sets has sometimes been challenging. This is especially true when we consider the data file sizes involved in MS analysis. Transfer parallelization therefore helps to address this challenge by allowing system administrators to optimize the number of parallel operations that can occur during the data transfer operation. This is while also considering inherent restrictions within any customer network. By using this approach, users can achieve up to 8 times faster transfer speeds during upload phase within a network data acquisition for MS acquisitions, and for all raw data when using the large file transfer feature. When we consider a large enterprise-based system, there are many components that need to be managed and updated simultaneously. For the discovery settings, this was previously done at each individual Chromeleon client within a given system. With the introduction of the central discovery configuration management, system administrators are now able to efficiently update all the necessary discovery settings on any clients from a single window. This now also includes the definition of the Chromeleon domain controller that any client should be assigned to. In essence, this allows for administrators to efficiently migrate multiple clients between different Chromeleon domains. Similar to the central discovery management, with Chromeleon 7.4, we also introduced central maintenance window management. With this feature, administrators are able to schedule windows for multiple clients all at once. This may be to update Chromeleon version itself or the underlying operating system. The feature allows for cloning of previously configured windows from other clients with an HTML report available for any necessary record keeping. So by setting these windows, users can be assured that no inadvertent interruptions will occur during data analysis, potentially raising unwanted deviations. With the ever-increased threat of cybercrime, cybersecurity should always be at the front and center of any software application. One potential weakness with many applications is the ability to import or inject malicious packages that can be executed when needed. The Chromeleon 7.4, we introduced a line of defense to allow system administrators more control over the type and size of files that users can attach and import into their systems. This feature will check attachments within sequences, e-workflows, as well as during the import process based on the allow list and the file size limitation requirements. Files that already exist within a system, perhaps prior to application of this feature, are also checked and prevented from being executed if they do not meet the requested criteria. In 2024, we introduced the e-workflow migration tool as an external tool. With Chromeleon 7.4, we have now embedded this tool within the Chromeleon administration console. The tool itself provides administrators the ability to migrate e-workflows in bulk, either between Chromeleon domains or within a single deployment. This migration tool also allows for the update of certain path settings within the e-workflow to maintain working operations post-migration. And finally, the tool provides the ability for bulk deletion of e-workflows and also the update of certain e-workflow path settings without the need to actually migrate them. Ensuring 24/7 operations is critical in today's businesses. The Business Continuity Repository represents a major update into the already gold standard network failure protection functionality, which already comes as standard for any enterprise-based deployment. Files placed in the repository are automatically replicated to local data vaults on instrument controllers, and therefore during any prolonged outage, users can now be assured of true 24/7 availability of their instruments and the necessary files and methods needed to continue working until full service is restored. With Chromeleon 7.4, we've expanded our export capabilities to include the animal file format. This now enables our MS customers to export their data in a vendor-neutral format for further processing, interrogation, and reporting in any third-party application as required. Web API 2.0 updates and upgrades our existing API as part of the overall Sample Manager Chromeleon link. With new architecture and deployment options, we offer a truly scalable API to provide a performant and stable connection between Sample Manager and Chromeleon Enterprise systems. The API is easily installed over the existing Link API and supports Chromeleon versions from 7.2.10 through to our latest release, Chromeleon 7.4. With Chromeleon 7.32, we introduced the concept of rule sets to our processing methods, providing a deeper granularity of control for system administrators over these methods. With Chromeleon 7.4, we've expanded upon this capability to introduce rule sets to the sequence table. Administrators are now able to define what users are able to edit within the sequence table, as well as some of the sequence properties themselves. With the ever-changing regulatory landscape, it is important that we continue to work and improve our compliance tools, in line with both regulatory authorities and our customers' feedback. In Chromeleon 7.4, we introduced two small but nevertheless important updates. Both are in relation to the control and monitoring of idle injections, i.e. injections without any raw data. The first update introduces a new privilege. This will allow for the restriction of being able to actually delete idle injections. To complement this update, we've also introduced a new policy to define the audit trail wording when this action is taken. Administrators can now select whether to show the word deleted or removed within the audit trail entry. Again, by listening to our customers, we know that some of you are increasingly asking for more control of your data processing. Specifically, here we are therefore introducing a new global policy to disable dynamic data processing. This is an expansion to the pre-existing function for MS data. However, this was in relation to performance improvements. With the policy disabled, users will need to save after each action is performed, and hence committing an entry to the data audit trail. As soon as an action is initiated, all results are hidden from the user until the action is saved. Hopefully you've seen some exciting new and impactful features in Chromeleon 7.4. So to summarize, we've seen improved MS workflow support with new features to widen application capabilities and accurate confirmation. We've seen increased throughput with rapid processing on large MS datasets to increase lab productivity. We've streamlined our management so you now manage your key enterprise settings from a single source and have efficient system management. With reporting flexibility, although not explicitly covered in today's presentation, we continue to evolve our powerful Excel-style reporting engine with Reporting 2.0. We accelerate performance. By removing the data transfer bottlenecks when dealing with large files, we can again enhance productivity and efficiency. And finally, MS data interrogation expands your data interrogation capability to improve library searching for wider MS instrumentation, diving deeper into your data. So that's all for today's presentation. Again, I sincerely hope you found this useful and are as excited as we are about Chromeleon 7.4. Many thanks for all your time and attention.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your very informative presentation. We will now go ahead and move into the live Q&A portion of the webinar. So as a reminder, if you happen to have a question that you would like to ask, please go ahead and do so now. Just type your question into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We will answer as many of your questions as we have time for. Perfect. We have our speakers joining us here. Amazing. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. So it looks like this first question we have is for Anthony, and this one says, how do new features like the sequence rule sets and delete idle injections improve auditability and system control?
Yes, I think really in both cases, we're obviously adding more granularity into our audit trails of some of the actions that users do within the software. So with the sequence rule sets, as I said, this is expanding on the processing method rule sets that already exists and we introduced in 7.3.2. So now we're making that a really granular approach for you controlling and editing your sequence tables. So looking at those columns in there and what you can and cannot edit and control within there. The other side of that with the idle injections, this is simply just filling a gap that we didn't have. It's really coming from feedback from you, the customers, on what you need and what you're facing from kind of regulatory authorities and audits. So it's just adding another level of granularity for the idle injections and tracing that for that action.
All right, fantastic. The next one that we have here is for Richard, and this one says, what are the advantages and limitations of using MS2 spectral matching versus single ion monitoring for quantitative analysis?
Yeah, so I suppose using different MS orders for quantitation with spectral matching is better than single ion monitoring, because when you have the ability to go to the second and even the third order MS level, you are filtering out a lot of the chemical noise that may exist in the sample. So for instance, at the MS1 level, you get lots of components that are recognized. At the MS2 level, you specifically target on a certain precursor mass, and then you will then quantitate on a fragment of that precursor mass. And also, given the additional advantages of being able to match the spectra that's generated from the MS2 precursor, this gives you a highly specific spectral match, and you can match this with libraries. So it's an incredible advantage over MS1 and SIM quantitation.
Perfect. It looks like we have another here for Richard. This one says, what are the compliance considerations when using spectral library matching for compound identification in regulated environments?
Okay, good question. So in a regulatory environment, you would usually use spectral matching as a confirmation of identity. So you would use a standard to generate a reference spectra and then match it to have additional confirmation that what you were looking at is the component of choice. Typically, when you use things like spectral matching, you normally get a putative identification of the peak. So you wouldn't use it on its own for identification, but you would use it as a confirmation of identity. And this might be along with retention time or ion ratio matching or isotope profiling.
All right, wonderful. This next one is for Anthony here. This one says, what advantages does the business continuity repository offer for labs working in multi-site or regulated environments?
Okay, yeah. So I think firstly, what I would say is when we talk about the network failure protection functionality within Chromeleon, this is for any enterprise customer. So that could be customers from a single site all the way to a global deployment. So there really is kind of, from our point of view, no difference in that perspective. We've had the NFP functionality in Chromeleon 7 since the introduction of the enterprise functionality, and it's really allowing customers that 24/7 uptime. We all know we're at kind of the behest of our company infrastructure if servers go down and networks go down, and we need to keep that productivity going in today's day and age. And really, what the repository is allowing you to do is just taking that next step. Again, one of the feedbacks we got from the customers is, NFP is great. It allows us to continue that working in a prolonged outage. But what we struggle with is we don't have access to our documentation. So these are our methods for data processing, for running the instruments, and even for reporting. So it was kind of a big gap from that side. So I think introducing that functionality, and this is the beginning of a journey on that new function, really kind of rounds that NFP story off a lot better and gives you that true 24/7 uptime.
All right, fantastic. It looks like we have one more question here, so we will go ahead and wrap up with this one. This one is for Richard. It says, how does Chromeleon handle calibration and quantitation when using different MSN levels for different analytes within the same method?
So quantitation of components in Chromeleon is driven by the channel that's selected for quantitation. In standard chromatography, it's driven by the wavelength that you've got selected or the FID detection channel, whatever that may be. In mass spectrometry, you have a collection of channels that can be used, and you can define which one is used as a quantitation channel. So in the use case of multiple MS orders, so if it's MS1, MS2, MS3, for example, you can select which channel is defined as your MS1, your MS2, and your MS3. So it may be that you have multiple components that you want to quantitate. They could be at the MS3 level, they could be at the MS2 level, they could be at the MS4 level if you had a desire to do this. It's really driven by what you need to select. I will add that in some cases, you may want to do kind of a fragmentation analysis for like a data-dependent data-dependent acquisition. And in this use case, you wouldn't typically have a peak or a series of data points that are given from data-dependent acquisition. You might only have one. So here we'd use the MS3 or the MS2 or whatever data-dependent acquisition to have a confirmation against the quantitative peak, whichever MS order that is at. So yeah, in summary, it doesn't really matter. Chromeleon will support them all.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. And thank you all again for your time today and for your very important research. We would also like to thank LabRoots and our sponsor, Thermo Fisher Scientific, for underwriting today's educational webinar. Before we go, I would like to thank the audience for joining us today and for their interesting questions. Questions that we did not have time for today and those submitted during the on-demand period will be addressed by the speakers via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. As a reminder, this webinar can be viewed on demand. LabRoots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We encourage you to share that email with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. All right, until next time. Thanks so much, everybody. Goodbye.